The first video I ever posted on this channel was the CMC's Cutie marks. In it, I theorized about what their marks would be and when and how they would get them. This video can now be summed up as follows. Well, I was wrong. Following Crusaders of the Lost Mark, I felt that I ought to make a follow-up. After all, almost every point I made in the first video has been addressed, mostly with me being wrong. Let me start off by saying that I'm not upset that they did something different than what I expected. There's always going to be a little disappointment when a headcanon gets squashed, but it is, after all, only a headcanon. Some people get a little too bent out of shape about these things. I'm not usually interested in making episode reviews, but in this case I definitely feel like I should go over the episode and give my thoughts on it before I get to talking about the marks themselves. My feelings on this episode are mixed. In all honesty, I guessed where it was going from pretty early on. Being a musical episode was a bit of a giveaway since the only two musical episodes we've had so far are Magical Mystery Cure and Pinkie Pride. There wasn't an outstanding musical guest here like in Pinkie Pride, so the only other reason could be that it was going to be very significant story-wise. The other giveaway was the title. As soon as it became obvious that the story was about Diamond Tiara, the title made no sense. It would have been more logical for this episode to be called A Diamond in the Rough, or Diamonds Are a Filly's Best Friend, or something like that. Or Fillies and Tiaras. Or Heavy is the Head That Wears the Tiara. I'm having too much fun with this. Anyhow, I guessed that their marks would appear at the end, and as I was watching the episode, I really hoped it wouldn't happen this way. This is partly because, as you know, if you watched the previous video, I didn't want them all to get their marks at the same time. I wanted each filly to get her own episode. The other reason is because it didn't even feel like the story was about Apple Bloom, Sweetie Belle, and Scootaloo. It was entirely Diamond Tiara's story. Speaking of Diamond Tiara, let's look at her for a moment. Like many fans, I've been wanting her to get more development. I was especially curious about her relationship with her father. I remember during season 1, most of us assumed that her parents were probably very unpleasant. In season 2, we were introduced to her father, Filthy Rich, and we saw that he seems like a perfectly decent pony. He was very friendly with Granny Smith, and when he learned that his daughter had been rude, he forced her to make amends. This led a lot of people to speculate that the mother was the bad influence. As we see here, that is indeed the case. But couldn't they have come up with a better characterization than this? Spoiled Rich is ridiculous in her over-the-top snobbery. She's not a character, she's a cliché. I've seen a lot of people comparing Diamond Tiara's redemption with that of Pacifica Northwest in Gravity Falls, and I disagree. Spoiler warning, I'm going to be talking about a Gravity Falls episode. Now, the idea of an obnoxious bully who gains sympathy when it's revealed that they have an unhappy home life is so overdone that I'm really getting sick of it. Gravity Falls, I felt, did a much better job with this trope than we usually see. Partly this is because they were willing to go dark with it. Pacifica's parents are shown to be not just mean, but abusive. Like, the state would probably take Pacifica into foster care if they knew whatever her parents did to make her so afraid of that bell. The fact that it's only hinted at instead of shown makes it worse. The second reason is because of the hidden room they find. Pacifica had always believed that her family had done great things, that she came from a noble heritage. It completely broke her to find out that her family history was made of lies, cheats, and injustice. Third, she had to undergo a high-stakes trial in order to earn her redemption. She watched a homicidal ghost attempt to murder a large crowd of people, including the only person she felt at all friendly toward, and she had to overcome some form of trauma in order to stop it from happening. The reason Pacifica's story worked is because she suffered. She was forced to question her entire identity, and she faced a great challenge. Diamond Tiara, on the other hand, just felt like the standard bully is unhappy story. Spoiled Rich is a terrible parent, setting a bad example, putting excessive pressure on her daughter, and ping ponging between being demanding and giving in. But at no point does she cross the line into abuse. Even if she did, she's so over the top that it could easily come across as comical. Of course, I don't expect MLP to go to dark places like Gravity Falls does. I do feel it could have worked if they had toned down Spoiled Rich's behavior and instead placed the emphasis on the pressure that Diamond Tiara feels. A lot of her conflict seems to be that her parents expect her to succeed at everything, and she's afraid they'll be disappointed if she ever fails. This is something that could work without the parents being unsympathetic. We know that Filthy Rich is a successful business pony, and we've seen him bring Diamond Tiara along on work. Maybe he has high expectations for her to take over the family business. That drive to succeed and be the best is something her parents could be overdoing without even realizing it. Instead of the scene we had with Diamond Tiara defying her mother, what if she talked to her parents to explain that they were putting too much pressure on her? Of course, all of that still deals with the story as it focuses on Diamond Tiara. Now, this episode has been compared to Magical Mystery Cure, and with good reason. Both are musical episodes which brought about a significant change in the character's status quo, and both have pacing issues. Now, I actually wasn't all that bothered by the fast pace in Magical Mystery Cure. It was very fast, yes, but I was generally okay with it. The pacing in this story bothers me a lot more, and I think that's mainly due to the focus. Magical Mystery Cure kept its focus on Twilight all the way through, so at the end, it did feel like part of her story arc. Crusaders of the Lost Mark kept most of the focus on Diamond Tiara, so when it cut back to Apple Bloom, Sweetie Belle, and Scootaloo, they almost felt like an afterthought in their own character arc. Not that Diamond Tiara's inclusion was a bad thing. There is something nice about her playing this role. Since she's the one who first brought them together as friends, it makes it feel like they're coming full circle. Overall, I think this entire story would have worked better as 2 episodes. Note that I did not say two-parter. I mean 2 separate episodes with other episodes airing in between them. Let's say the first episode covers the first 2 acts of the story. The Crusaders help Pipsqueak win the election, find out about Diamond Tiara's problems with her parents, and invite her to hang out. Then we could just spend the rest of the episode showing them hanging out in the clubhouse. Diamond Tiara could talk to them about the feelings towards her parents. They could talk to her about how they're working towards their cutie marks and why, and they could just start to bond. This would work fine as a complete episode. The moral would be that getting to understand someone is the first step towards becoming friends. It would give significantly more focus to the Crusaders by having them talk about their motivations and how far they've come. The second episode would open showing Diamond Tiara feeling conflicted and unsure about her place. She's still worried about disappointing her parents, and Silver Spoon still isn't speaking to her, but she is starting to develop more of a relationship with the CMC. She could decide that she now trusts them enough to ask their advice on fixing her relationships with her family and former best friend. A discussion could then follow in which each of the Crusaders gives their views and offers some advice. Again, this would be an opportunity to make sure the story focuses on them as well as Diamond Tiara. As Diamond Tiara is thinking over their advice and trying to decide what to do, Pipsqueak would show up with his problem and the story would proceed as it did. Diamond Tiara's first instinct would be to go back to her old ways, but having spent more time with the Crusaders, their arguments would have a lot more weight. Diamond Tiara does fall into the trap that so many MLP antagonists fall into when they see the light and decide to be friends too quickly. If she had spent more time bonding with the Crusaders, it would be a lot more believable that she would stand up to her mother or talk to her or whatever. So overall, I liked the story and general concept of the episode. I did not like that the Crusaders got so little focus, Spoiled Rich's over-the-top behavior, or the pacing. In other words, mixed feelings. So now that I've talked about my feelings on the episode, let's talk about the actual marks. There is one thing I'm really happy about. They didn't wait until the end of the series for the Crusaders to find their marks. I wanted them to get the marks while the series was still ongoing so we could see where it goes from here, and I'm very pleased about that. On the other side, I really wanted them each to get their own episode, so I was a bit disappointed that they all got them together. This is made worse by what I was talking about before, how they got so little focus in their own story. On the other hoof, I was assuming that they would get marks for singing, scooter riding, and designing. I'm still reserving judgment on the decision to give them matching marks. In a way, it seems to go against what we've been told about cutie marks so far. They are an expression of individuality. They show what makes a pony special. Giving ponies matching marks seems to deny their individuality. I think this is going to depend a lot on where it goes from here. If they just leave it at them having matching marks, I'll be disappointed. However, I would be very curious if the show will address the fact that they have matching marks. Like, what if Twilight acknowledged that it was odd and she wanted to look into why different ponies would get the same mark? What if she decided to compare the Crusaders to the main six? Both groups of ponies got their marks at the same time, but the main six still have individual marks and talents. Would this mean that the Crusaders' destinies are even more interwoven than the main sixes? In the same respect, the decision on their talent will also depend on where it goes from here. I imagine that as they grow up, they'll expand the Cutie Mark Crusaders from a club to a real organization where ponies can come for help, advice, counseling. I actually kind of like the twist that their talents weren't what we all assumed after the showstoppers. I almost feel like we fell into the same trap the Phillies did. We all thought they were overlooking the obvious. However, what have they been doing in almost all of their episodes ever since we met them? They've been trying to help each other earn their cutie marks. Sure, they each wanted to earn their own, but the reason they formed the club was to help each other. So it really was right there all the time. Let's take just a moment to look at their new marks. It seems that the shield shape probably represents helping others, much like Shining Armor's shield represents protecting others. The 3 bars are the colors of their manes. The shapes in the middle are different in each mark. I've seen it theorized that the outer shapes represent the 3 pony races. An apple for the earth ponies, a wing for the Pegasi, and a star for the unicorns. Taken all together, they would show that the Crusaders will help all ponies. The inner shapes seem to represent the individual ponies. A heart for Apple Bloom's compassion, a lightning bolt for Scootaloo's athleticism, and a note for Sweetie Belle's musicality. I am glad they got some individual representation on their marks. So, in conclusion, I have mixed feelings on the episode, and I am cautiously optimistic about their marks. A lot of it will depend on what the writers do next. Speaking of what they do next, since my first video was all predictions, I'll end this one with another prediction. I think the Cutie Mark Crusaders will help Starlight Glimmer understand cutie marks. Since season 5 is almost done, I expect this will be confirmed or busted very quickly. See you later!